Yeah, I'm just bringing up his record here, Dustin Poirier. Listen, I understand, right? Because he beat Anthony Pettis, beat Gage, he beat Eddie Alvarez, beat Max Holloway, then he lost to Khabib, and he beat Dan Hooker. And that fight with Dan Hooker was amazing, by the way. He feels like he wants more money, but from the UFC's perspective, they're like, well, you're not the champion. The only real time then you've got that bargaining power is when you're the champion, and then you can talk. And even then, I remember with Dana, I was trying to get more money once, and he was like, what are you talking about, Mike? You've got a contract. You signed a contract, and it has championship terms in there, and that's just the way it is. And if you sign that, then I guess you've got to be a man and honor out that contract. Of course, across the board, I want more money for everybody, so I feel for Dustin Poirier, but it is a tricky one. But yeah, anyway, listen, best of luck.
I'm sorry. Well, what's his option to retire? I don't really understand what the terms are here. So Dustin Poirier is gonna.
But it's up to him. It's up to him. He can choose. The UFC can't force you to fight.
Of course,
they cannot force you to fight. So it's up to you. Do you want to sit out? You want to retire?
Is there a time limit?
No, I don't think there will be, because even if you get injured, they put a freeze on your contract. I think so. So something like that. I haven't got a contract in front of me, and I never really studied them that hard anyway. But I do believe, so they don't really expire like that, because if you say you're sitting out or whatever, I think it puts a freeze on it. I'm not sure. I don't want to misquote there. But, the only thing is you'd have to do is say, right, well, I'm sitting out. And then UFC, obviously, they got to hold their ground, and they'll say, all right, well, fine. And then they both sit there. And ultimately, it's Dustin Poirier that's going to lose out the most, isn't it? Because UFC will still go on business as usual. Yeah. And then eventually maybe Dustin will come back, or the UFC will reach out and say, come on, Dustin, come on. All right, let's talk. So anyway, fingers crossed. I hope they figure it out. Nobody knows the facts, right? Nobody knows the facts. And I will say this, right? I feel like we have to give him the benefit of the doubt here, because I don't know, man. I've always said there's no smoke without fire, but this has been several times now. Several times. Okay, and one could argue, well, he keeps getting away with it, so therefore he keeps doing it. But I gotta say, you'd have to be pretty fucking stupid to be routinely sexually assaulting people like that. Do you know what I'm saying? You got to be pretty fucking dumb if you're constantly
devil's advocate
and doing it. Devil's advocate, of course. There's lots of devil's advocate in today's show.
Devil's advocate, Bill Cosby.
I can't do a Bill Cosby.
That was like Arnold Schwarzenegger turning into Bill Cosby.
Put it in the drink. No. Listen, devil's advocate. Yeah, listen, there's always a devil's advocate. There's always two sides, right? But I'm just saying, because you got to remember, he's fucking supremely wealthy. He's world famous, and he is a target. Now, I'm not defending him. Because we don't know any facts. But I'm just saying. I don't know. I'm starting to get a little skeptical.
I get what you're saying. So here's the thing, and we all have to put our detective hat on. You step back from it for a second and go, fine. And I don't want to be always just believing guys, but it's like, it's not that I believe guys. I'm saying, when you have a guy that's that famous, who parties that much, who obviously has a target on his back for multiple lawsuits. I don't know how many lawsuits Conor McGregor has had to go through already, but if I had to guess, we've heard about a handful, and I'm sure there's a bunch more that have just happened that we haven't heard about, okay?
Or they slide through the cracks.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm just assuming that it's something that, like, if he gets taken in for questioning and then no charges are filed, I have to say, like, look, I can't. If charges were filed and he was arrested for it, I would be much more like, oh shit. But because they let him go and no charges were filed, I'm going like, okay, well, I'm not going to just say the guy's a go ahead.
Devil's advocate. Devil's advocate. The way it works though is, Lewis, you generally don't get charged. If you go in there and you're denying it, then they do an internal investigation, and then it'll go to the Crown Prosecution Service, the CPS in England. You would, if you deny it, unless they have slap bang undisputable evidence, you would not get charged unless they had it on video, and certainly in a sexual assault case. Right. So you would not get charged. The likelihood of being charged on the spot right then and there, unless there was a bunch of witnesses in the room that saw it, that undeniably it went down, you wouldn't get charged.
It doesn't have to be by the rankings with Tony. You don't have to follow the general principle of whoever won his last fight takes on somebody else that won their last fight, and vice versa for the silver medals. You just don't have to do that with Tony. And I think if you were to look at the rankings at 155, understanding that what is on the line, Khabib himself has said, if you beat him, I will fight you. Now, it takes a third party to make that fight happen, but Khabib is at least saying yes. That's meaningful, and that matters. So if you turn to a ranking and go, okay, we can't get Poirier, let's call Charles Oliveira, by example, you would see where that could be met with a level of resistance. And even though he could do great with Tony and good for them, do you want to see that as much as Tony versus another booking? Oh, and by the way, if we are to take these factors at their word, which in fairness, we should not because they are just words, but if we are, could you imagine that Oliveira is one fight away from being in there with Khabib? I think that would probably stretch your imagination a little bit. It would seem he's a couple more. Some guys are one win and some guys are 1 year, and no part of this is a commentary on Charles Oliveira in a negative way. No part. Big fan. I'm sharing with you. Well, here, let me just get to the chase. Dan Hooker. Dan Hooker versus Tony Ferguson. What do you think? Do you have any problem with that? Is any part of you going to turn to the rankings and complain? Is any part of you going to say, well, their last fight? Are you going to do any of those things? And you would also see where that could be very interesting when we're in a sport in a space that is about being given an opportunity. You are giving nothing else in this sport except for an opportunity. So could you imagine that Hooker goes out there, he comes up short against Poirier. Poirier doesn't want the opportunity for whatever reason. Hooker goes and takes it. Hooker ends up getting an opportunity even though he lost his previous match because the guy that won the match doesn't want it. That's the way sports work.
Colby Compton, Woodley, a fight we've all been, especially the hardcores, we've been vying for a long time. Better late than never. It's interesting now because Colby's such a favorite. Woodley's obviously fallen on hard times. I love both of these guys. I really do. They're two of my favorite people in the sport. And the issue with this is, Woodley's, obviously at the tail end of his career. Colby Covington, still fairly a young guy coming to his own. His fight against Usman going into the 5th round, I had it 2-2. Some would have it 3-1 Colby. Usman, just being the pure world champion that he is, got it done in that 5th round. But if you gave me the roster of the welterweight division, you said, what's the worst matchup for Woodley right now? It'd be Colby Covington. It's just not a great matchup for Woodley, who really hasn't won a round in 10 rounds, dude. You look at his last few fights, it just hasn't been the Woodley that we've come to know and expect and love. And, he's also older, man. He's also older. He's had a great career. You're talking about a Hall of Famer. You're talking about the face of the welterweight division for a long time. Wins over his Wonder Boy wins, his Robbie Lawler win when he won the belt, Kelvin Gastelum, Carlos Condit, Josh Koscheck. And then, again, his Wonder Boy wins back-to-back. One was a draw. Then he won a decision. Then he beat Damian Maia. Then he beat Darren Till, which he wasn't supposed to do. And then he fought Kamaru Usman. Didn't look like himself there. He just didn't look like himself. That's where the Usman kind of reign began there. Usman absolutely dominated that fight. Then he fought Gilbert Burns. Got dominated in that fight. So he lost every single round. You could do a few 10-8 rounds if you wanted in that Usman fight. He loses that round, gets taken down, kind of looked checked out. Then he gets Gilbert Burns, which I thought was a better matchup for him stylistically. He gets dominated in that, man. Striking just all over. So, if you're a Woodley fan, you got to be a little concerned because he hasn't won a round in 10. He hasn't won a single round in 10 rounds. And then you're fighting Colby Covington. Well, let's talk about Woodley first of all. What problems does he have inside the octagon? Anytime a guy is a pressure fighter, has a high pace and a high output, he tends to struggle with that. It's usually a nightmare for Woodley. Well, what's Colby Covington do best? High output, high pressure, great cardio. It's a fucking nightmare for Woodley. That's why I think Colby Covington is a huge favorite. Huge favorite.